We think we can judge strangers well, but we actually can't. Solomon is a judge in New York who decides bail. He takes his job seriously. He reads case files but also talks to defendants face to face. He thinks he can spot mental instability or lying from their eyes and body language. But a 2017 study found judges were worse at bail decisions than a computer program. The program just used basic facts like age and criminal record. Yet its choices committed fewer crimes if released than the judges did. Judges believe they understand strangers by looking at them and talk. We all think we judge people well from little information, but we are very overconfident in this ability. A 2001 experiment by psychologist Emily Pronin demonstrated this. She had people fill in missing letters to make complete words. Then she asked what their choices revealed about them. Most said their choices are random and meaningless. But when shown others' words, they thought you could tell a lot about them from their choices. They believed you could know if someone was tired or goal-oriented from the words. What was absolutely wrong. So from a small hint, we think we understand strangers completely. We see ourselves as complex, but see strangers as simple to judge. In truth, strangers are far more complicated than we assume. Humans are not very good at detecting lies. We tend to assume people are telling the truth unless there is overwhelming evidence that they are lying. Anna Montes worked as an intelligence analyst for the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. She was actually a Cuban spy who gave important U.S. secrets to Cuba. In retrospect, there were some warning signs about Montes, like her reports echoing Cuban viewpoints and her taking phone calls during crisis. But these signs were not definitive proof she was a spy. Her co-workers defaulted to assuming she was telling the truth, even though some found her behavior odd. It is much more likely someone is just a bit strange rather than being a hugely damaging spy after all. The DIA investigators faced a common challenge. We tend to believe people are truthful unless there is very clear evidence they are lying. Psychologist Tim Levin did an experiment where he had students cheat on a trivia test or not cheat. He then interviewed them on video, asking if they cheated. Levin asked test subjects to watch the videos and determine who lied. On average, people were only able to correctly identify liars 54% of the time. Professionals like therapists, police, judges, and even CIA officers are not very good at detecting lies. The reason is that we generally assume people are telling the truth. To shift from suspicion to disbelief, we need an obvious trigger like clear nervousness, lack of eye contact, or struggling to find words when directly accused of lying. Without a blatant trigger, we tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. Some people are better at detecting lies than others, but for society to function properly, most people need to assume that others are telling the truth most of the time. In the 2000s, a financier named Bernie Madoff scammed thousands of investors out of over $64 billion. He claimed he was earning them big returns, but he was lying. Most people believed him because they assumed he was telling the truth. But one fraud investigator named Harry Markopoulos saw through Madoff's lies. Markopoulos was suspicious because of past experiences with fraud. When he analyzed Madoff's business, he realized the claimed profits were impossible. Markopoulos warned regulators about the fraud starting in 2000, but they didn't listen until years later. While it's good there are skeptical people like Markopoulos, most people benefit from assuming others are honest. According to psychologist Tim Levin, most interactions don't involve deception. Treating everyone with suspicion would be disruptive. For example, checking if your barista calculated your 47 rupees bill correctly would waste time when they are likely honest. So we can appreciate Markopoulos' ability to detect lies. But for functioning society, it's best most people assume truth unless given reason not to. Madoff-type scammers are rare outliers. Defaulting to trust makes sense for most situations. Life is not as simple as a TV show like Friends where you can easily understand what the characters are feeling just by looking at their faces. In real life, people's facial expressions do not always show their true feelings. A psychology experiment had people walk down a hallway into a dark room. Later, without them knowing, the hallway was changed to be brighter with green walls. Their best friend was also now sitting in a chair staring at them, which should have been surprising. Afterward, the experiment asked people what facial expression they thought they had made. Most said they looked surprised with wide eyes, dropped jaws, raised eyebrows. But cameras filming their faces showed only 5% actually made the classic surprised face. 17% made part of the expression. The rest made no clear surprised face at all. The experiment shows that we often expect our faces to show more emotion than they actually do. We think we can read faces like on TV shows, but in real life, faces don't always reveal people's true feeling. This gap between how we think we look and how we actually look can lead to misunderstandings. So we need to be careful when judging other people's emotions based only on their facial expressions. Real life is more complex than a TV show. We often completely misunderstand people when we don't know them well. In 2007, British student Meredith Kercher was murdered by a criminal named Rudy Goody. The evidence clearly pointed to Goody as the killer. Yet for a long time, the police incorrectly believed Kercher's roommate Amanda Knox was the main suspect, not Goody. The police came up with a bizarre theory that Kercher was killed during a dangerous sex game between her, Knox, and Knox's boyfriend. There was no evidence linking Knox to the crime. So why did police immediately suspect Knox? It was because they misguided her behavior and character. Knox did not act like a grieving friend after the murder. She was physically affectionate with her boyfriend in front of Kercher's other sad friends. When someone said they hoped Kercher's had not suffered, Knox bluntly said they cut her throat. She fucking bled to death. To the police, this didn't seem like grief. But some people just are not transparent. Their behavior does not match their true feelings and thoughts. The police made false assumptions about Knox based on her reactions. Many honest people can seem like they are hiding something when they are not. And many liars can convincingly look you in the eye and lie. We should not make snap judgment about people's honesty based on their behavior. The police wrongly judged Knox because they did not know her well enough to understand her true character. Alcohol was worsen interactions between strangers and lead to terrible consequences. In January 2015, two students saw a man and woman lying on the ground outside a fraternity house. Something seemed wrong, so they approached the man. Brooke Turner got up and ran up. Turner had sexually assaulted the unconscious woman. Situations like this happen too often. Why? Well, sexual consent between newly met people is rarely totally clear. Even before drinking, a 2015 poll asked students what indicated consent to continue sexual activity. 40% said taking off clothes did. 18% said not saying no did. There was no real agreement on what showed consent. Alcohol makes murky situations even murkier. Alcohol makes us focus on short-term desires and forget long-term consequences. Normally, we balance the two. Alcohol removes the long-term thinking that restricts behavior. It can destroy impulse control like for the aggressive Brooke Turner. Unfortunately, alcohol's effect is poorly understood. The poll also asked how to reduce assault. Most said tougher punishment. Just a third thought drinking less would help, and 15% agreed with campus alcohol limit. The victim said focusing on drinking, not consent or assault, is wrong. Men must learn to respect women, not drink less. But the author disagrees. We should do both because with alcohol impaired judgment, people can't be honest and clear. Sandra Bland was unfairly targeted and mistreated during a routine traffic stop due to the police officer's inability to properly judge her as a stranger. On July 10, 2015, Sandra Bland, a 28 years old African American woman, was pulled over by Texas State Trooper Brian Encina for not signaling a lane change. However, Bland had only changed lanes because Encina had driven aggressively close behind her. She was just trying to get out of his way quickly. Bland expressed irritation at being stopped. When Encina then asked, "Are you done?" in a provocative way, it likely made Bland feel even more upset. Encina later claimed he did not mean it confrontationally. Bland lit a cigarette to calm herself down. Encina told her to put it out, but she refused since she had done nothing wrong. Rather than defuse the situation, Encina escalated it by demanding Bland get out of the car. Things then quickly got worse. Bland refused to move and Encina began yelling threats and forcefully pulled her out of the car. Slamming her to the ground, Bland asked if he felt good about his actions and mentioned she had epilepsy. Encina callously replied, "Good, good." 3 days later, Bland died by alleged suicide in police custody. This tragic situation demonstrates the problem with police making false assumptions about strangers. Encina pulled Bland over using an aggressive policing approach suitable for high crime areas. Despite this being a low crime stretch of highway, she wrongly assumed Bland was dangerous based on her irritation and cigarette, rather than recognizing these are signs of stress. The takeaway is that we need to stop making assumptions about strangers and improve how we interact with them. Encina failed to properly judge and de-escalate the situation with Bland, illustrating how we often don't know how to properly talk to people we don't know.